Thank you all for coming today. I am very excited to introduce you to Mrs. Barb Mann. She is a finalist for the Dean of University Libraries and Archives. We've invited her here today to talk to you for just a little bit about where she sees the vision in the future of university libraries and archives and services over the next 5 to 10 years. And then the second half of this session, we'll actually open it up as an open forum for Q&A. So with that, please join me in welcoming Barbara Mann.
Pull up my presentation here. Okay. Well, it is an honor to be here. I really enjoyed the day. Oh, don't get in the lights. Go towards the light now. That's right. It's been a pleasure to be here. I've really enjoyed everything that I found out. I'm very impressed with all the things that are going on here. It's really an active university with making great contributions to the teaching, learning, and research mission of the university. And you're all up to be commended for everything that's going on. My topic today is how do I see core services and functions of libraries and archives developing in the coming years to meet the changing needs of constituents, and what improvements would I like to see in some of the core services and functions in academic libraries. So, 3 days later, after I figured out what the question was asking. Okay. How do I advance this? Okay. Is there something here I should be doing? Okay. I'll just wink at you when it's time.
I found something I'm good at.
Just point. In April 2016, Ithaca S+R, a nonprofit consulting and research service, launched the 6th in their cycle of triennial services, the faculty survey for 2015. Are any of you familiar with any of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating in looking at the data. But one of the questions they asked was, how is important to you that your college, university, library provides each of the functions? How apropos. And these were the 6 functions they talked about. The gateway serves as a starting point for research. The buyer pays for resources. The archive as a repository for research, teaching support, research support, undergraduate support. So I want to talk about these as the functions and then the core services within it, as well as I think that there's 2 more and possibly 3 more that should be on here that were not included, and I'll talk about those at the end. Okay. So let's talk about the buyer. Okay, and. Okay. The buyer's most important role is for the library, according to faculty, was 85%. This is what faculty think that is most important. And print and electronic resources are provided by the library support the teaching, learning, and research needs of the university. However, there are a lot of improvements that need to be made to this. Journal costs are out of hand, as we all know. In the 2014 article evaluating the big deal, the 3 authors using Freedom of Information requests looked at the pricing for journal packages for 55 university libraries and 12 library consortia. The big deals are defined according to the authors where the contracts offered for the publisher's entire journal list are bundled by a single entity. Now look at the pricing differentiation. And I use the Sage journal package as one example because it was the only one where I could find a school for Kansas in it, the University of Kansas. But look at that. You know, Oklahoma State at 69,000, University of Kansas at 100,000. I mean, look at how much money the publishers are making off of these journal packages, and such a discrepancy. And they're bundling it in such a way that you're getting a lot of stuff you don't want, as well as the stuff that you want. In fact, you know, the other problem with all this, is access, because we're now getting it in various ways. Remember the old days when you bought perpetual access, but you bought print just in case, and now nobody's using the print, so that's taking up space that we're now having to get rid of because nobody's using it. But there's a problem that we're getting it with perpetual and temporary access only through aggregator packages, and then we're buying them directly with perpetual rights. So there's this mixed bag, and then publishers are pulling out journal publications periodically that are affecting the teaching and the research needs of the university, and they're doing it apparently at a willy-nilly pace. One of the academic libraries in the Colorado, I always get this wrong, Colorado Association of Research Libraries, Carl, you remember Carl? They were paying $500,000 for the Science Direct Freedom Collection. So they wanted to see if they could get a better bang for their buck and buy things individually, buy things using that $500,000. Well, they found that they could buy 105 titles, but they were losing access to 1,900 others because of that. And so, next slide, please. Oh, sorry, too far. Go one back. One more, sorry. Consortial pricing is one answer to it, going through a consortium, but if one of the institutions have a problem with the pricing and has to drop out, then it's going to affect everything else. Journal pricing models need to be addressed. This is a major problem. It is a function we do to provide access. It's a core service in providing the journals that we have, but we're losing important resources because publishers are pulling them out, and we're not able to then support the needs of the teaching and learning and research. Okay, now. Okay, archiving. Oh, that's right, we'll start here. Archiving is the repository of resources. I'm going to talk about archiving in the special collections context a little bit later. Ensuring future access is something that libraries need to do a better job of. And we also need to determine what libraries are important. Now, as I mentioned to you, publishers are pulling out access to things. If we want to keep access, then we might have to look at some various journal archiving projects. I don't know if you're familiar with LOCKSS and CLOCKSS and Portico as services. LOCKSS is out of Stanford University. CLOCKSS is controlled locks, and it's a partnership between academic libraries and publishers. And Portico is a commercial venture. But let's look at the pricing that goes along with this. I looked at Portico. They calculate the fees based on the library's total material budget. So if we looked at a library that was $500,000 to $750,000, they would be paying $4,326 a year. If we looked at something like medium master's colleges and universities through LOCKSS, we'd be paying $5,028. Think about that. We're paying that much money to hope that we can maintain access to things in addition to already having the things that we're paying access to. So this is in addition to the annual subscription cost we're paying. This is just in case some publisher decides to pull. This is a real problem in libraries, and we need to find a way to work this out. This is a problem for the future. And I don't have an answer to it, but it's something that we're going to have to be talking about more. Okay. Assessment is something that also libraries need to be doing as far as making sure that we are providing the resources, the core services for the users. Like looking at our databases. Do we have the right databases? Do our numbers show that they're being used? If they're not being used, why? Do we need to go back to see if it's still important to the department? Or it's something that nobody realizes we have and we need to do a better job of marketing? Or is it something we need to pull altogether? And not only the cost of the database, but what is the per use cost? Because if somebody's only using it 5 or 6 times, it could be costing us $100, hundreds of dollars for that access. We also need to do collection comparisons and benchmarking against our peers. Are our peers using the same database as we are? Maybe they have something we don't, or maybe we should be getting rid of something. How instrumental is a resource in supporting the curriculum? And what is the overall cost we talked about? And whether it actually provides full text within the database. You know, we don't want to look at just abstracts. Nobody does. We want the electronic text on our fingertips, just as our students do. We also need to do more benchmarking against peer institutions and even aspirational peers. Do we have resources that are best supporting the programs that we have? Or do we need to be looking at things differently? Do we need to be getting rid of some things and adding some other things in? And an external review. I don't know, I would assume that your academic programs go through a formal review process through the Kansas whatever the Kansas Education Commission is, where you have external reviewers come in and look at your program. Libraries need to do the same thing. We need to look at hire external reviewers to look at our collections to see if they are meeting the needs of the curriculum. We did this when we were when I was at University of Maryland, University College. We got 4 external reviewers to come in, and it was very helpful. We found that in most cases, probably 99%, we were good, but there was one program that we needed 2 collections that we didn't have, and because we had that data, we were actually able to get it from the university. Books. Thank you. The Ithaca survey also looked at books, and you see here where it talks about print versus about ebooks. And if you look at the print versions of scholarly monographs, you see that the humanities, the red, is more than 60%, and the social sciences are next. But if you look at e-versions, the numbers reverse. Our users, including us, want fingertip access. Sometimes they're not able to come into the library. Can you believe it? They might wait till the last minute to do an assignment. It's a surprise to me. So they want more access to ebooks. But ebooks have a lot of the same problems as journals. While the number of titles increase through aggregator collections, we don't have future access guarantee. You buy a book, it sits on the shelf, it's ours. But if you buy an ebook, it may be here today and gone tomorrow. There are some things that work that may help to compensate for that. There's a lot of out-of-print dealers now that work online that you can get. There's a lot of print demand, and some of this collection is born digital already, so it's already in that format. Okay, ease of use. I think we went one too far, maybe not. Oh, I guess not. Okay, we'll start. I'll go to the Hathi Trust. Okay, the Hathi Trust. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's the Hathi Trust for Digital Libraries is a system of millions and millions of scanned books. They just won a lawsuit with I think it went all the way to the Supreme Court about access for people with disabilities being able to get it. There is a fee to join the Hathi Trust, but it is a way of gaining access, perpetual access to books that you might not have otherwise. And they have a complicated fee structure to do this. But it's something that libraries may want to consider. Again, it's money involved. However, they do make available books that are out of copyright and via open access government information through the Hathi Trust. I know when we had to cut the early English books online at my library, the faculty members who were using that were able to go back to Hathi Trust and be able to find some of those books through their collection of books that were out of copyright. And also we'll talk about weeding. I don't know if that's something that is done here, but we need to have a plan for weeding. We need to have, first of all, a collection development policy that makes sure that books are being purchased for a reason, that they are meeting the curriculum needs, they're meeting the research needs, and that needs to be looked at every year to see if it needs to be updated. Based on that collection development policy, you're able to do things like protect yourself from unwanted donations, because you can say, I'm sorry, this does not fit our collection development policy, which you put on your website so that you actually have the information there. It also means that you go up to the collection and get materials out that may not be relevant to the collection anymore. They played a role at one point. But there's one thing to consider on that, and that is that every library's weeding may be meaning that all copies are gone. There may be some things that need to be kept. They may not need to be kept on the shelf where people can get it, but they may need to be kept for historical purposes later on. So consortia need to do a better job of having a conversation with each other to determine a formalized plan of who's going to keep what, so that you are keeping things that may have historical significance in the future, but are not things that you want to keep on the shelf, so that they are there, but it's not a burden to each individual. The library as a gateway. Go back one. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Providing access is a function that we do, an important function. You can have all these resources in the world, but if you don't get it so somebody can get to them, what is the good of it? It's like the old days when people said, you want to check out that book? No, let's leave it on the shelf. The Ithaca report stated that as a starting point, it's actually on a rise according to faculty. It had gone down in 2012, that people didn't see it. It was as important that the library provide access. But now it has gone back up, which is important. Thank you. Okay. The library website is probably the most important access that the library has. In many ways, I think it rivals the physical space because there are a lot of users, this is how they come in, especially for distance learners. They may have never set foot on the campus, but they need to access our website. Often, the website has to conform to the university website rules and regulations for it. And I don't know about your here, but at mine, the website is used as a marketing tool for students. So it's not always set up as a way that wants to have access. That's a tension that happens, and it's up to the library to make our case of why having a different type of website or having things look a little differently is very important. And a couple other things we need to keep in mind is responsive design. We need to make it so that you go from device, 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 you can find what you're looking for. And also, we need to do a lot of usability testing. We may know how to find something, but do our users know how to find something? And that's something we need to do more of as an assessment measure. Discovery services. Using the graphic from your library, thank you very much. Discovery services, which is a way of a one-stop shopping of finding access to databases, books, websites, government information in one fell swoop, is really a useful tool as a starting point for research. However, as we know, not everything is available in the Discovery service, and so that is the failing of it. And because of the differences in the types, some Discovery services are better at pulling up scholarly materials than others. Now, ease of use is a problem in this Discovery service. It was very interesting. Last Friday night, I provided an instruction session for Doctor of Education students in educational innovation. This was a new cohort that was starting. And we were going through, now these are doctoral students, so you think that they have some research experience. And so we were going through very carefully the various points, starting with the Discovery service so they could get the kind of overview of all the resources and then go to the individual database. And we talked about simple search techniques, and I was showing them how to set up a folder. Well, it needs a password that you have to create. And then we're talking about setting up alerts so that they would know every time the database, well, you have to put an email address. And that became complicated. And then if you didn't have the full text, here's how you could get it through interlibrary loan. That required a different password. It is so complicated that no wonder users are going to Google.
Right.
And because they don't always have the evaluative criteria that they need, they're taking junk. But it's the ease of use. And so one of the things we need to do, we need to fix in the future, is making it easier for our users to find information using tools such as this. And there are tools that can overlay onto it. So if you put in a search that really wouldn't work, it will automatically correct it. There was something I heard of called Xerxes, I think Xerxes, at a Computers and Library conference, that if someone were to put in, for example, an APA citation, it would strip out everything but the parts that you would need to actually find it and would take you through. That's both good and bad. It can teach you to not be good searchers, but it can also help you to be to be successful in what you're doing so that you will actually find something and want to come back to the library and thinking, the library doesn't have what I want. Open access. We need in the library to help students and faculty find and use open access as a new core services. Many institutions are now using open access to replace textbooks. At my previous institution, we had a mandate to get rid of all textbooks and use open access because students couldn't afford the textbooks. And because they didn't have the textbooks, they were already behind. And there are open access materials out there, as well as materials from the databases that can be used because we've already paid for them. So we, as librarians, have to help faculty have a better understanding of this. We also need to gain more experience and knowledge of open access resources and understand copyright, including Creative Commons, helping faculty to understand how to use Creative Commons in their own work that they do, or taking materials that they find and being able to reuse it based on the Creative Commons licensing. Okay, we'll talk about teaching support and undergraduate support as a group, because the core services for these are really the same. With students not only being users of information, but also creators, how we educate them in locating, evaluating, synthesizing, and ethically and legally using information is really important, as well as demonstrating to them the transferability of the skills. The fact that these are the same skills they'll use for research paper, as well as information sources in their personal and professional lives. Part of the Ithaca survey regarding the role of library asked faculty about this, and as you see, undergraduate support, look at that, almost 85% now of faculty in the baccalaureate understand the importance of the library and helping users need that. And teaching support is almost 75%. And they also said, quote, since 2012, there's been a substantial increase in the perceived importance of undergraduate support role for the respondents. Now, we know that the undergraduates lack the skills in information seeking and evaluating, but so do employers. The Project Information Literacy Report from October 2012, Learning Curve, How College Graduates Solve Information Problems Once They Join the Workplace. And by the way, I have a handout of all the references that I've used today for you. Noted that while students, that new college graduates who were their employees, and they talked to employers such as Microsoft, Marriott International, the FBI, the Brookings Institute, and a whole host of others, as well as conducting focus groups with 33 college students from 10 different universities. That while students knew how to use computers, they didn't know how to find information if it wasn't online. They didn't know old-fashioned skills such as actually reading an annual report or talking to somebody who had been in the company, who had been in that position. And there was a real concern about that. In addition, the 2016 Project Information Literacy Report, How Today's Graduates Continue to Learn Once They Complete College, learned that students didn't know how to find information about their field after they graduated. They didn't know how to form a research question because they had always responded to assignments. They hadn't done it on their own. They didn't know how to do these types of things, and they said that they were using the evaluating and synthesizing techniques they learned in college. So somewhere there's a breakdown in how we're teaching things, and we need to figure out how to fix that. They also didn't know the social side of research. They didn't know how to have face-to-face conversations or use social media as a way of getting answers to the problems that they had. Information literacy instruction is a core service, has been for a long time, continues to be. But we need to look at this differently also. The new Association for College and Research Libraries Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education, with the 6 frames focusing on the threshold concepts, which are ideas in any disciplines that are passageways or portals to a large understanding of the way thinking and practicing within that discipline, that'll take you a minute to think about, provides a changed way to approach instruction. The framework draws heavily on the concept of meta-literacy, which offers a renewed vision of information literacy as an overarching set of abilities on which students are consumers and creators of information who can participate successfully in collaborative space. And you see the 6 concepts right here. These frames, with their accompanying knowledge, practices, and dispositions, which give examples of how they can be demonstrated, provide a pathway for us to use in redesigning curriculum, redesigning assignments, and looking at pedagogical practices, including those regarding student learning and the scholarship of teaching and learning. With students being information creators, instructional activities also need to include discussions of scholarly communication issues, such as publishing rights, copyright, and the information cycle. There are different ways to do this, to reach out to the campus on various things, and I was pleased in the conversations I've had to hear that you all are doing a lot of these things already. The embedded librarians creating tutorials, our LibGuides, although we need to be careful with our LibGuides to make sure they're not too wordy. I know I see so many of them all over the place when I've looked at various institutions. We love words, and we need to learn how to be a little more sparingly in it so students don't get overwhelmed by the amount of information. including student support services, which I was thrilled to see all the ones that are working coming into the library as a way. Campus and student faculty opportunities, looking at scholarly societies to help them look at support for issues with integrity, academic integrity through citation analysis, looking at athletics, student clubs, looking at various ways of including things about various activities like Banned Books Weeks, National Library Week, Open Access Week, Choose Privacy Week. All these types of things provide themes that we can use. Now, the core service of reference is something that is greatly changing, as we know. Students are not coming in to the reference desks. We sit there at the desks and wait and wait and wait, and nothing happens. So we need to look at how we can go out, how we can be available at the point of need. I was looking at I was understanding that there's a lot of student activity here. What if a librarian came over with a laptop and sat there and said, need some help, or walked around and saw students study and said, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? I'm a librarian, I'd be glad to do it. Well, what would happen if we did that kind of stuff? There was one librarian I saw one time who had a little hot dog stand and was going around campus where she saw student groups, had a little sign that said, I'm here to help. So looking at ways that we can do that, while instant messaging and chat is working in some ways, sometimes I find that our constituents don't know about it. So short of skywriting, how do we do a better job of letting people know that we're here to help them? Okay, let's talk about research support. Ithaca rated this the least important role for the library relative to other roles, but still was important. In the past, we played a role in research where we helped faculty to find resources, directed them to things, maybe help them with citations and things like that. But times, they are changing when it comes to that. And the skill sets are changing. I want to talk about two in particular. Data curation. With the requirement of open access now to the data that's required as part of national funding agencies, such as the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health grant-funded research projects, they have to make the data available. And so the libraries need to help them to manage it and to make it available for people to use. Well, I went to the ALA job list, and I was curious to see what kind of position announcements they had for these types of roles. And so look at what data curation says now. This is from the University of Rhode Island. Plays a key role in developing services and policies to collect, manage, curate, provide access to, and instruct in the use of data throughout the data lifecycle. The ideal candidate will have proven experience supporting applied research with statistical methods and strong public services orientation. Well, I don't know about you, but when I went to library school, we never talked about this kind of things. And I don't know if the curriculums are doing that now, but this is something that needs to be looked at, are these types of things. Digital scholarship is another one. A lot of PhD students in humanities are coming out with a lot of experience in digital humanities. And there's other kinds of projects that are being done that require somebody who has digital scholarship experience. So this is also from the ALA job ad from Penn State University Libraries. Advanced degree in humanities or social science field, demonstrated proficiency with one or more technologies commonly used in digital humanities or social science projects such as database design and development, XML encoding, GIS, data visualization, topic modeling or social network experience, analysis, experience with development, management of projects, grants, or budgets, experience teaching or leading workshops on digital scholarship tools and or methods to faculty and students, experience working collaborating with other scholars and with IT professional projects related to digital scholarship. And I don't know if you've seen the Data Visual Lab at Georgia State called Curve, but they have a 24-foot screen where students and faculty go together to work on these projects using data visualization, and it's in the library. And they have staff there that can help them do it. We've worked with faculty in the past to determine research impact using journal impact factors and citation analysis. But now with the rise of altmetrics, the alternate metrics, whereby faculty can track the impact of their research, not just through publication, citation analysis in book journals, but also through social media, web bookmarking, and downloads. The librarians need to improve the skills in this area and become more knowledgeable to help faculty have a better understanding and so that they can help them to use it. These are a couple examples of some altmetrics tools that I found online. Scholarly communication is another core service for research that will continue to develop. Librarians need to have a better understanding of where to publish in a particular discipline, predatory journals and publishers, research identifiers such as ORCID, Open Research and Contributor ID. How many people have ORCID IDs? Authorship guidelines, copyright transfer, and also now that some open access journals are actually requiring you to pay to publish in it, is this going to become a line item in the library's budget to help faculty do this because of the open access, or is this going into the department budgets? Libraries also have a fear of copyright issues. We say we're not lawyers. We don't want to give the wrong information, but there are many things that we could learn to help faculty, like fair use, help them to understand fair use factors and how to do through that. There's some training that we need to do. I don't know if any of you participated in the MOOC that University of North Carolina and Emory and Duke put on in 2014 called the Copyright for Educators and Librarians. I did it and I learned so much, and it made it so easy to understand that I felt more comfortable after that in being able to talk more about fair use things. And librarians need to increase their own research efforts. We need to be conducting our research ourselves so that we can better understand the process and also be seen as peers with the faculty that we're working on. Now, there are two things that were not included in the Ithaca that I think need to be there, and those are space and special collections and archives. So I'm going to talk about space first. The New Media Center Horizon Report 2015 Library Edition said that, quote, according to the 2015 Student Engagement Insights Survey, 77% of college students say they visit the library to study on their own, while only 51% indicated they go to use the online databases, unquote. We need to provide space for active learning, group study, individual study that is safe and inviting. This is currently something that we do and we need to continue. But how the space is used is going to continue to evolve. We will need to make changes based on what we do, and assessment is important. Let's take something simple, plugs. When we built our libraries, did we put in plug outlets for all these mobile devices? No, we didn't even think about that. And now students are coming in with their iPad, their phone, their whatever, and they're wanting to plug in and charge them. And we don't have power outlets for them. And so they don't want to stay here to do things if they can't plug in what they're doing. They may even have their laptop with them too, or something else. And so we need to be looking at these things. And you know how much it costs to put plug outlets in? I know, because we're just doing it at Mann, and I saw how much it costs to do that, and it's not cheap. We also, as you're doing, which I'm very impressed, offer space for these student support areas and find collaborations, synergies that we can work together to work with students to help them to build their skills and to find the library to be a welcoming place where they want to come. And the trend also continues to move forward with libraries making maker spaces. I'm really excited about that because technology is so rich and there's so many things now that faculty and students can partner in making these products, especially since the library, as I've said several times, is a discipline-neutral place. You know, we're not tied into a particular discipline, so it's a place where students can come. We have open longer hours. You know, if students want to work in the evenings or weekends, we're open, they can come there. And we have the resources and services to support some of the projects they're working on. Both the Horizon Report Library Edition for 2015 and the Higher Ed Report for 2016 talk specifically about makerspaces and how important they're becoming. Special collections and archives. Of course, they continue to play an important function in preserving the history, not only of our university, but as we say on the website, the context within the national and global areas. And we'll continue to process and make available these collections. But more and more collections are being digitized, so they're made available to people to use outside. And that comes with a wealth of processes and procedures to ensure preservation of materials, standardization of how it's captured, standards for encoding and finding aids for online environment, and copyright protection. With the proliferation of social media, so much of information is no longer able to get. You know, how do you capture a Twitter feed? How do you capture hundreds and thousands and millions of Twitter feeds? People aren't writing letters anymore. I'm still old-fashioned. I still love to see a letter in my mailbox. It makes my day. But so many of this is gone now, and we've been saying this for years, that we're losing large chunks of our history. And in departments, we're throwing away things. A lot of things are electronic, so we're not able to capture important documents about meetings and minutes and things like that that are part of our history. So we need to work on how we can convince the campus of how, and I'm not talking about here, I'm just talking about all over institutions, because I haven't been an institution yet that has done a good job. Maybe you guys are the exception, who does a good job of capturing this kind of data so that 15 years from now, if you want to go back and look at something that happened now, that there's actually a record of it, because it may have got thrown out when somebody cleaned out their office or left. Perhaps we need to create some sort of checklist for administrators and committees and academic departments and groups so that they know the kind of materials they want, and a transfer system to make it easy for us to get. Then there's also the problem of things changing. You know, you're probably, most of you pretty too young to remember 3.5 or 5 1/4 to 3.5 discs. How you can't read them anymore, and yet you may have boxes and boxes of them that have all kinds of important information that you can't capture anymore. And every time that we change to a new way of doing something, so we copy something over, we have degradation of the quality of the product because it's been changed over and over again. And while we are setting up dark archives where something is being set, are we going to be able to read it in the future? Is there going to be a standard? You know, that was what microforms were. Now, how many of us use microforms anymore? I mean, how do you find a microform reader anymore, or get one fixed if it breaks because they're not being used? You know, is PDF still going to be a good method to do it? And then, of course, even different kinds of formats for different kinds of image capture. So you want to make sure you do. And we need to provide more marketing and access to materials. That's another core service. I was so thrilled when I had my Zoom interview and you told me about the Make Way for Ducklings. I just thought that was the neatest thing. Going out to the schools and talking about that. We need to do more programming where we show these important events. I was talking to the, at Augusta, the university historian, and she was talking about how she'd gone to a white glove event, which was held at the local history center, where people paid a fee to come for a dinner, and they had special collections, materials out that they could look at. They had to put on white gloves, hence the name, to touch them, but they were able to see these materials up close and personal, and they made some money off of it by doing that. But it was a way of helping to know more about it. There's one more I want to add that I didn't have in my notes, but after conversations today, I think it needs to be added. So I don't have a slide for this one, and then I have more things I want to say. I think one of our functions is reaching out to the community. That we need to find ways to be more involved in the community in helping them. Working with the public libraries, working with the school libraries, finding ways that we can collaborate on programming, of skill training, of things like that. I think that's very important. That's something we need to continue to develop for the future. Okay. As we make available all these core services and functions, how do we know that we're meeting the needs of the research, teaching, and learning of the mission of the university? How do we know this? Well, in 2010, September, Dr. Megan Oakleaf, Associate Professor at the iSchool at Syracuse University, launched the value of academic libraries, which is really important. It demonstrated the value of the libraries in retention, progression, and graduation efforts through assessment measures. And if you've seen the report, there's a whole variety. It talks about tying to institutional learning outcomes and various student data collection points to be able to tell. Instead of the old things like number of instruction sessions, number of books in the collection, they really don't tell you anything. I mean, they tell you have instruction sessions, but you could have been teaching them how to play bridge. I mean, you don't really have where you're tying to the learning outcomes and showing the value. The University of Minnesota took this and showed, so here's an example of how you could do this. They did a study where they wanted to know how the library was affected by how the library affected first-year undergraduate students in regard to academic achievement and retention to the second year. So they used 10 collection points, which focused on online services, collections, and interactions with library staff, automatically collecting it using scripts to authenticate and authorize the users. So I put here are the collection points, the topics that they covered. They found that library use positively associated with higher GPAs and retention than no library use. Now there's a lot more work that needs to be done on this kind of stuff, but it's the starting point. And libraries in the past have been a little hesitant to use student data because of privacy, but there are ways to get around that. And working with institutional effectiveness, whatever the data folks are on campus, to find ways to look at various data points and how they show a causation or correlation with library use and student retention, progression, graduation. Ethnographic studies are another important one. The University of Rochester started the movement, and I think it was like 2005, 2006 when they did it. They had an anthropologist, Nancy Fried Foster, and they had a variety of techniques. They went into students' dorms at midnight. They had them draw out how they wanted the website to look. They had them concept mapping, what did they remember for how the library looked, things like that. They revisited this study in 2013 and found totally different results. Things had changed so dramatically between the first one and the second one. And then the Ariel project is ethnographic research in the Illinois academic libraries. They also used an anthropologist, Andrew Asher, and did a variety of studies within institutions within the university system. And they found all kinds of neat stuff. Like they followed this one woman around who was looking for a book that had an RM, I think it was RM 126 call number. She went to 3 different service desks. Nobody knew where room 126 was. They finally figured out that it was the call number for music. There was an item, it was a book with that call number. Well, needless to say, it provided some training opportunities for the staff there to provide better service. In addition, one of the schools had students go out and map what they remembered about the first floor of the library. They all remembered the statue, but nobody remembered the reference desk. So what does that tell us about students? So we need to have more information about student use. We can say till the cows come home, students want this, but we need to have the data to prove it. Okay. Demonstrating the value to research, teaching, learning through core services and functions is an ever-changing process. It requires keeping current with trends and issues in higher education, librarianship, and culture, because that affects things. It requires continual assessment to demonstrate its value to the university, and it requires nimbleness in being able to change and adapt as needed, vision and commitment to the constituents we serve. I've dedicated my career to this type of work, and I will continue to do so as I move forward. And if I were to come here, I want you to know that I would be committed to moving the library forward and meeting the users we serve in the best way we can. Thank you very much. And thank you. And now I will entertain your questions.
You kind of talked about community or different things like that. The William Allen White Book Award.
Yes.
How would you manage that, or how could that maybe be an influence into the community?
Well, very interesting question. I met with two of them, with Beverly, I can't remember her last name, and Carmine from the high school. We actually talked about that. And one of the things would be to continue as we're doing, which I think is really exciting and giving the students an opportunity. But what would happen if we funded some sort of small award for students to write some sort of creative writing project, working with creative writing to partner with this for different age groups, and to have students who could be illustrators to do that, to not only talk about the authors that we already have in the books, but also how you too could be the future William Allen White Book Award winner because of this, to foster that kind of creative endeavor as a part of the process, and publicize it. To go out to the community and show that we have this. Here's the award winner, and to make it something very special, make it an annual event as part of the award, to help I think of it also as another part of not only are they creative writing and things like that, but what a way to start the whole part about academic integrity at such a young age. So they understand about plagiarism and those types of things at that age, and then will continue to move forward. Did you want to follow up to that?
I just wondered, would you do this as part of your job, or would you divvy this out for someone else?
I would put it as part of the whole award process.
Oh,
So we'll talk it as a corollary to it, or as another way of increasing the significance. I mean, it's already significant, but increasing the significance and getting the school children even more involved in it. Yes.
I have a question. Of course, we met earlier, Cynthia came from the library. I'd be curious, if you were to be offered and then to accept this position as the dean, what would your first week on the job look like?
My first week on the job would be to understand the processes of the library, the business processes, understand the services that are already being offered, but it would also be listening. What I did when I started at my previous position is, during the first 2 weeks, I met with every member of the staff individually, so I could find out more about them, what they did, what they felt, how the library was doing, what things would they like to see changed, what are things they wanted to do to move forward in their own careers or jobs, however they looked at it, to make the library continue to grow. And that information was very helpful in looking at what was going on. So it would be sort of my own mini assessment of what's already working, what are things that people might be suggesting that we might want to look at as future projects, what are things that people might be suggesting we might want to look at as change. Yes?
Diversity and inclusion has been a big issue here in Emporia State, and I was wondering if you had any experience with any diversity or programming for the library in your experience.
Yes, the library, through the efforts of one of the librarians received one of the $10,000 National Endowment of the Humanities American Library Association Latino Americans 500 Years of History grants. And Augusta does not have a large Latino population, but through the work of that grant and the programming that was done in collaboration with the public libraries, I learned a lot about the community. And the people who attended learned a lot about the community. We had 2 faculty members who served as kind of the parts of the grant, and there was a PBS series that we watched, and we had discussions about Latinos and Americans in the history of the United States. There was also one of the towns in the Augusta area is named for a Cuban immigrant, Martinez. That's how they say it there. And we learned more about him and the role of Cubans. There was tie-in with the Latin American group ACHA, and they did programming with them. They're doing oral history project now with Latinos in the Augusta area. We're going to collect that and give it to the library. We're buying books in that area. So that's just one example. Yes.
You mentioned in your talk open access. My question is, how do you think you can get faculty to embrace open access more than they perhaps currently do, and with ordering books from the bookstore every semester like they've done for the last 20 years?
One of the things that is going on in the university system of Georgia, and maybe that would be something to look at here within the university, is they're awarding grants for programs that are looking at incorporating open access materials into their courses. So that's, a lot of times incentives make a difference in doing something like that. And then those people who are doing it are kind of the vanguards of the project and are helping to get other people involved. It's also, a part of it is the fear factor of not understanding how it all works and what's out there, thinking that it's a lot of junk. The other part of the equation is, as faculty are creating materials, to look at how they might make it available as an open access. They might license it under Creative Commons so that other people can use it, which also, it goes to the reputation of the university. Here, look at all these wonderful open access materials that the university is making available. Look at how wonderful they are. I'm going to be able to use it in my teaching.
Thanks.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had a hand. Now you have to ask me a question.
I can ask you what size budget you're used to working with.
I'm sorry?
What size budget you're used to working with?
The way that it works at my institution currently is that we have a major budget for both libraries, and then I have a budget for my library. And mine, I think, is $350,000. There's no staff parts in mine. Mine's all resources, travel, supplies type things. And we spend it to the penny and don't overspend. I treat budgets like it's my own money. I mean, I've turned down supply requests because I know one time they put in for these things that you put journals in, and I said, you know, there's a whole bunch of them in the supply closet. Why are you ordering these? So being even aware of what's in my own library to make sure that others are aware of it. And when it comes to travel, I believe very strongly in professional development. That I think is very important, not to send somebody because it's, you know, a trip on the library, but because they're going to gain something from it that they can bring back and implement with us. And I've had several librarians who've been accepted to present also. So we've made it possible for them to have a full ride to wherever they're going with a couple changes. One, I took out the food budget because a lot of times there are at conferences, there are all kinds of receptions and things like that, and this is not a party. And the other was we changed the mileage down to the second tier, because somebody could go to the University of Georgia, which is 90 miles away, and make over $100. Well, it's 90 miles away. It doesn't cost that much in gas. So by lowering that and taking out the food, it made it possible for us to send more people to conferences, and that was appreciated. People understood the reason for it. It wasn't just because I'm mean and I don't want you to eat while you're there, but it was because people needed to, in order to broaden the possibilities. But you know, I know people who maybe get $500 a year, and that won't even pay a registration sometimes for a conference or anything. And why should they go in the hole when they're coming back to help us to learn more that we can do here? You know, coming back excited about things. I had a brand new Access Services librarian. I wanted him to, the conference was in Atlanta. I thought it was important for him to go to understand. My archivist had never been to a Society of American Archivists meeting before. So she missed out on those opportunities to learn from the national part and also to network, to meet other people that could help her further on. So it made it possible for her to do that. And I'm looking for ways to also implement for staff. Faculty have to go through the whole promotion thing. That's why the focus on them for their promotion status. But I think it's also important for staff. I was a staff person for 11 years. And I know there was a lot of things that I contributed to the library, and I believe strongly in staff. And so finding ways to also develop staff, I think is very important. And we have had to cut databases. When I was at UMBC, we had to cut to the bone on many things. We had ours was like $1 million something budget, and we had a management team that looked at these decisions, and we had very in-depth evaluations. We would meet together 3 or 4 times during the period to go through each database one by one by one, looking at the cost, the access, whether there was full text in it, and making these hard decisions of, well, maybe we could get rid of this one this year. And we would be advocating as the liaison for the particular subject area, also inviting interlibrary loan people who were looking at what kinds of things are we getting requests for interlibrary loan. And we looked very carefully at it and made some hard decisions, but presented it to the faculty of this is why we're having to do this, so that we can better support you in these ways. And sometimes it was not always accepted, but they got over it. I mean, we weren't doing it just to be mean. There was a justification of why we were doing it. And people got used to it, and there were no hard feelings. Anything else? I don't dance or anything like that.
well, if there aren't any more questions, then we actually are right on time. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention.